Hey yo, thanks for tuning in to Celeb Sauce. It's the backup channel backing Celeb up and bringing you all the breaking news. As you already know, on January 7th, a young 29-year-old African-American man named Tyre Nichols was pulled over by the police for an alleged traffic violation after he just got finished photographing a sunset. After he was stopped, he was wrestled down to the ground, pepper sprayed, and then tased. Scared for his life, Tyre managed to wrestle himself free from the cops, then he fled on foot. Now, after chasing this dude down the street for a few, the police stopped because they were huffing and puffing, and then they called for backup. Now, when the backup squad, which was part of the Scorpion squad, caught up to Tyre, they proceeded to beat this dude down like he was nothing more than a rag doll. I mean, they're hitting him with the baton, they're jumping all over him, they're kicking him in the head. I mean, these cops beat this unarmed black man down to a pulp. Now, after they get finished with their jacked up version of training day, they drag this dude's limp body over to the police car, and he's telling them, I'm having trouble breathing, listen, get me some help. But they do not render any aid to this dude. And then, on top of that, it takes more than 23 minutes for an ambulance to show up to take this dude to the hospital. Now, after he's admitted to the hospital, Tyre died 3 days later due to the injuries incurred from the brutal beating. Now, the other day, the Memphis police decided that they were going to release the video footage of the beating, and I gotta tell you, I sat there and I watched it, and oh my goodness, I was horrified, I was mortified, my soul was crushed from seeing this beautiful black man moited in the streets by 5 other black men who seemed to have absolutely no respect or regard for human life. I gotta tell you, no human being deserves to be treated that way, and these 5 black cops, not only should they be put in jail, but they need to be put under the jail. But, let me say this, I saw more than just black cops at that incident. I also saw some white cops that contributed to the situation, so they need to be arrested, charged, and locked up too, because everybody who contributed to the death of this young man needs to be sitting in jail. Now, honestly, it does not surprise me that these 5 black cops did what they did, because throughout history, there's always been a handful of black people who help out the ops. I mean, all Master has to do is give them a few apples and a watermelon, and those Uncle Toms are Jimmy Crack on the spot to help with the lynchings. I mean, they're out there shucking and jiving, and they're the first ones to be like, Massa, I done seen him run that way. He went that way. I's got the rope. You want me to chase him for you? Cause I can string him up for you, Massa. Just let me know, cause I's can do a really good noose, sir. Listen, I'm not saying this to disrespect black people, but I'm saying this specifically to the Uncle Toms out there. Y'all better check yourselves before you rickety wreck yourselves, because if you don't have any love for the person who's made in your own image and likeness, then you don't have no love at all, because that means you don't love yourself. We should be the last ones out here doing harm to one another, which is why all this black on black crime is crazy and it needs to stop. Now, with that being said, I stand in full solidarity with the Nichols family as they seek justice in the criminal justice system for the murder of their son, Tyre. Now listen up, my good peoples. Malcolm X once said that the man that enslaves you is not gonna be the one that saves you. So we gotta start coming up with our own solutions, because too many of our young black men are being killed by the cops, the old school slave patrols, for them to ever defund that organization. So we gotta come up with something else. So check it, I'm just gonna throw something out into the ether, and it's not gonna solve the whole problem, but maybe it might help. As it stands now, most applicants to the police department only need to have an associate's degree, right? You got these white dudes, they apply to the police department straight out of families and friends and loved ones. All they're seeing is a whole bunch of little doughboys. So here's my suggestion. I believe that we need to read the history of the marginalization, the oppression, and subjugation that African Americans have had to suffer through in this country, in addition to the richness of African American culture. And 3, it would ensure that all police officers going forward had at least some positive interactions with black people Before, you just hand them a gun and a taser and set them loose in the streets. And here's the best part. It's free because the government wouldn't have to spend a dime. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking the guys who did that to Tyree Nichols were black cops. How does that affect black cops? Well, I'll tell you. Those bums who did that to Tyree Nichols are just following suit with the other bums. So if the other bums get their act together, trust me, those black bum cops will get their act together too. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're sitting out there and you're like, Sauce, your solution sucks. Well, if my solution sucks, then come up with a better solution and put it in the comments. Now check it. I'm not the only person who's really upset about this whole story. After the footage was released, Pusha T took to Instagram and he wrote, quote, hashtag Tyree Nichols didn't deserve this. Broken heart emoji. End quote. In the caption, Pusha T also called out the 5 officers charged with the man's murder. He wrote, quote, to Darius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Emmett Martin III, Justice Smith, Desmond Mills, you have failed our people. End quote. Royce the 5'9" also shared his thoughts on the matter by posting the 5 officers' headshots with a caption that read, quote, look up Anthony Johnson circa 1651, first black man who was a slave that got free and then owned slaves. Interesting read. End quote. Now, rapper turned activist My Son also chimed in by saying, quote, hashtag coward culture. These officers are a product of a system that's been taught that black life has no value. These cowards would never harm a white man who spit on them and then threatened to kill them, but they executed a harmless young black man because they thought they could. End quote. My Son went on to say, quote, the blue uniform and the structural racism behind it is the problem. We need something different. I'm outraged, I'm hurt, I'm angry, but I'm also ready to make this ish change. Rest in power, Tyree Nichols. You were murdered for nothing by cowards. Hashtag boycott black murder. Only a coward could enjoy something like this. End quote. Now, similar to My Son, Funkmaster Flex also had something to say, but he turned his anger towards the Black Lives Matter activists and demanded a response. Funkmaster Flex said, quote, when the officers are not white, everybody moves on. Really take a good look at the way these black officers are beating this young black man to death. Really watch it. Beaten while handcuffed by 5 officers, few yards away from his home as he yelled for his mom, and he's a father. At Black Lives Matter, y'all busy spending that stolen money? Y'all available or nah? Y'all seen these or effing no? Where is the protest? End quote. Listen, I don't know whether Funkmaster Flex is right or wrong. I gotta think about that a little bit. However, I do know that there's a difference between this case with these black cops and the usual cases with the usual suspects. And that difference is usually the police departments, 1, don't want to come up off the videotape, and then 2, it takes months and years before they want to arrest those cops for what they did. These cops were arrested right away. But like Benjamin Crump said, the speed with which these officers were held accountable should be the new standard and norm moving forward in America for everyone. Crump said, quote, no longer should you tell us that we need to wait 6 months to a year when you have video evidence of a crime against these officers. We have never seen swift justice like this. End quote. Listen, I don't care whether you're black or white. What I do care about is seeing my young black men live to a ripe old age without being murdered by cops in the street. That's what I... To the next story. The other day, Drake's former bodyguard, Mike Van Wyck, did an interview with Money Buys Happiness, and during the show, he shared a little bit about what it was like to work with the certified lover boy for 6 years. When the interviewer asked him what the biggest lesson he ever learned from Drake was, he revealed that it was his quote-unquote work ethic. Van Wyck said, quote, I thought I had a work ethic, and I do. I guess if you ask people about me, I do work hard. I don't really take days off and kind of just grind all the time. But to see this guy at that level, watch them go out night after night, especially on tours and perform, it's robotic in a positive way, not in a negative way. I'm watching this person do this every night, and to see the looks on these faces and to understand that level of work ethic and that level of consistency is pretty wild to see in a person. End quote. Listen, I give Drizzy Drake a hard time, but I gotta admit, that is one hard-working brother. And I think that when it comes to work ethic, he sets a very good example for all of these young rappers trying to come up behind him. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, Wiz Khalifa has something to say to all of you rappers out there who take more than a day to write your raps. Wiz Khalifa said, quote, "The fact that I send my features back same day be having me looking at these artists crazy. It does take a minute to write a rap sometimes, especially if you're focusing on what you're saying, or you just suck." End quote. Listen, I don't know if I agree with Wiz Khalifa here because sometimes it may take you a little bit to figure out what you're gonna spit. And every rapper has their own process. Some people might do it quick and some people might do it a little slower. But if you ask me, some of these newfangled rappers maybe need to take a little bit more time trying to figure out what they're gonna say because wow, some of these raps are trash. But then again, how long does it take to write Molly, Percocet, Molly, Percocet, Molly, skirt skirt, Molly, Percocet. And listen, that's no shade to the Migos. I'm just using those words as an example. Hey yo, check it out. The other night on Instagram, P. Diddy decided that he was gonna share a little love. He posted a picture of his newborn baby girl, and under her picture he captioned, quote, "I'm big love and she baby love," end quote. Listen, P. Diddy's daughter is absolutely gorgeous. And you know what? I'm gonna end this video right here. You know why? Because what the world needs now is a little bit more love, sweet love. Hey yo, thanks for tuning in to Celeb Source, your source for celebrity news. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Peace.